Hello there, this is Stormdog, and today I want to talk about a movie from 1987, Fatal Beauty. It's an American action comedy film, and of all people, it stars Whoopi Goldberg. Not really the type of person I would have really picked for a film like this, but I was willing to take a chance. I've seen a bit of her movie Burglar, and actually liked what I saw, and I need to revisit that at some point. Nowadays, I tend to avoid anything she's involved in. And yes, she was in the Ghost movie, and that was a little bit weird if you really think that scene through. But let's stay away from that one. Other than that, there's not really anything in her stuff that has really drawn me to her. I don't have any desire to see the Sister Act movies or really much of anything else she's done. I think she's in every new version of The Color Purple that they make, and it seems like you have to do that every generation or so, like it's some kind of requirement. So she wasn't really one I intended, but I wanted to see if there was a possible chance that this was just a really underrated hidden gem that I had missed out on. Currently on IMDb, it's sitting at a 5.4 or so out of 10, and I wanted to see, upon revisiting that, if there was some chance that this was actually a really good film. And so revisited I did, and was happy to find that it had Sam Elliott in it, in a major role within it, as actually of all things the love interest. Now I guess I should go over the story a little bit. In this movie, Whoopi Goldberg plays Rita Rizzoli, and while different characters do remark on the fact that this African-American woman does have a notably Italian name, it's never explained, and I actually kind of like that about the film. I like it when they don't have to tell me every single bit of the character's backstory, and just leave it a mystery or leave it up to me to figure out or just ponder on, instead of just force-feeding it to me like I'm some kind of idiot. I hate when they write scripts to the lowest common denominator or the lowest common intelligence in the room. And so she is a cop there out on the California coast, and within this, she finds herself going through different drug busts and noticing along the way a connection to one particular company, Kroll Construction, owned by Kroll himself. And so she begins to track this one particular new deadly drug on the street, Fatal Beauty, that it shows the repercussions of as she tries to track it down, pin all this on Kroll, leading us, of course, to our finale and the confrontation at the end. It's pretty good stuff, mostly. There's a couple things I want to point out with this. The action scenes in particular, some of them are really quite well done. There is one scene in particular, a sequence of scenes I really liked. She infiltrates a place there where they're dealing drugs, and it is this abandoned apartment building, and walls are knocked out. There's different areas open throughout it for the camera to pan through, and it's in its own little kind of enclosed section of town, like she had to infiltrate this own little fortress to get in there and everything, and then everything goes to pieces, and she tries to escape with the help of Sam Elliott's character. This is about midway through the film, and it is a really good, really tense sequence with some excellent action in it as the different thugs and everything are hunting them throughout this section of the building. And I don't want to draw any comparisons to The Raid. I think that'd be unfair to this movie, and I don't really think there's anything either way, but just a flavor of that with them going room to room and through the broken down walls and different places like that. It is the highlight of the film. I do feel like the finale of the film, the final action sequences, are actually dumbed down a little bit. It does what most films do, to where it has to have the main character be the most awesome person in the film, and that's pretty normal for films, especially action films from the 80s and 90s. It's very rare that you run across one that does not fall into this, and often it's pretty well deserved. Often it makes sense and you're agreeing with it and you're liking the one-liners here and there, but Whoopi Goldberg, I feel like, just doesn't really nail this along the way. So we've got to, by the end, even though Sam Elliott is incredible, he is one of my favorite underrated actors. I did a movie or a video review on his movie Shakedown not too long ago. Well, at this point, it was probably pretty long ago. But either way, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed some lines he had from it. I've enjoyed a lot of the other appearances he's had throughout the years, whether it be in westerns or in action movies. So Sam Elliott is one of my favorites, and in order to make Whoopi Goldberg the main hero, we have to put him on the back burner. We have to have him make some mistakes or whatever it may be, or get one-upped, and so he gets shoved back in order for her to be the true hero. And with the action that came before, I feel like the finale kind of drops the ball. It kind of lessens the stakes in some ways with the weapons they choose to use, the locations they're set in, the amount of thugs she goes up against. So I feel like it really kind of shoots itself in the foot with that one. The director, Tom Holland, I wasn't terribly familiar with him. I did notice he does the original Fright Night. The original Fright Night, I don't know if he did the sequel. Those are good movies. And the sequel as well is also really good. He tends to do a lot of horror. Fright Night was actually his first film that he directed. He's acted in a lot of different things, including some of his own projects. And he tends to do a lot of adaptions of different horror stuff, especially on TV. He's done some of the, of course, Stephen King adaptions that were made into TV miniseries in the mid-90s. So not necessarily someone I'm really used to seeing, but I liked his work that he did. They say that if you're a good horror director, you usually end up making a good action director along the way as well. Some other small roles I want to note throughout this. As one of the other police officers, we have Ruben Blades. I saw him recently in The Super with Joe Pesci. That was a recommendation from the channel Hats Off Entertainment. A very good, worthwhile channel if you like comedy movies. And so he shows up in a lot of stuff, a lot of bit stuff, and I really like his stuff. I'm not sure I've ever really seen him headline a film, but I did enjoy him in The Super and some others I've seen. We've got John P. Ryan in here as one of the officers. He plays really good villains from what I remember. I believe it was Class of 1999. He plays one of the robots. Did really good in that. He's been in things like Runaway Train, even done voice work for animated movies, even like Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Every single one of those Batman movies from that period, those animated ones, are really, really peak stuff. I really enjoy them. They're all good. And he has been in all kinds of other stuff, including Best of the Best, Death Wish 4. I enjoy all the Death Wishes. Yeah, by 5, it's just not as good. And an underrated comedy movie that's not mentioned as much as I wish it was nowadays, but 3 O'Clock High. And so he had big parts in all of those. Does really good playing an authority figure, good or bad, in those instances. As the main bad guy, we've got Harris Yulin, and he's one that you see him in all kinds of stuff, but you don't really make a connection. He's in a lot of big stuff like Scarface, Clear and Present Danger, all the way up to more recently Training Day, and he's still working in the industry. He's still doing a lot. Does a lot of these roles. He tends to get overlooked a lot, but is very stable in those. Brad Dourif is in this as well, and I always like seeing him in different stuff. Recently, one of his big things that he's done is in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he was Wormtongue. He's gone all the way back to as far as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That is an excellent film. He's not as big now as he was then, tends to do a lot more TV work now. But I still find him to be very enjoyable in what I can find him in. He's just a really great addition to your cast when you can get him. And so he's done a lot along the way with these smaller roles, but it's been a while since he really had a big main starring role in something highly successful in the industry. Fatal Beauty itself, as an action movie being set with a black main character in this time period, in this section of the country, of course, drew comparisons to the ongoing Beverly Hills Cop series at the time. In fact, it came out the same year as the second movie as that series. The first two are very enjoyable films. The third one you might as well just skip. I have high hopes for the next one coming. We shall see. It doesn't help with the comparison that Harold Faltermeyer did the music for both of them. He's very famous for his Axel F theme. And so that, of course, drew more comparisons to it. It's interesting to look at some of the people they were originally looking at for some of these roles. They wanted Cher to be the main character. And I have no idea how that would have gone. That would have been interesting there. At one point, Tina Turner's name was brought around for that, and ultimately ended up with Whoopi Goldberg. I think I might have actually really enjoyed seeing Tina Turner in this role. I thought she did well in Mad Max 3, Beyond Thunderdome, whatever you want to call it. For the love interest that Sam Elliott played, Billy D. Williams was at one point, considered, and I think he would have done really well. I think he's really underrated in the industry. I'm glad that lately he's gotten to do some things. So instead, they went with Whoopi Goldberg and Sam Elliott as the main two, the love interests. And with that, they were going to basically have a love scene. It was filmed and everything, and then due to possibly test reactions from test audiences, they decided to cut it. People weren't happy with it. I don't know. Different people along the way have claimed that it was because of the interracial side to it. By the 1987, that's not really such a big thing that it was. I have no idea if this contributed to it at all, but the MPAA originally gave the film an X rating, and it was, of course, dialed back to R. They appealed it. I don't know if they actually made any changes to it. Sometimes they can just appeal it and get it changed. Even recently with Asteroid City, they had a really good reason for rating it R, and the director just said, no, I think it should be PG-13. And they were just like, yeah, you're a huge director. We'll go with what you say. And so he didn't have to change anything. So kind of making the rating system pointless if you're a big enough director. I'm not saying that's what happened in this instance. I'm just trying to give you a glimpse of how all of this works. So a lot of the pieces of the film really honestly actually work and work quite well. Satisfying squibs, some really good action in there, some incredible scenes that are they're really enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. And they've got your snappy 80s dialogue and everything. The only part that really feels like it's coming up weak in the cast and everything else is Whoopi Goldberg herself. I just do not feel like she measures up. And shortly before the finale of the film, they try to give her this backstory that she just kind of exposition dumps. She does fine with it, but the story in and of itself, this is more of a script issue than a her issue. In that instance, it doesn't make sense for her character. And basically talking about all this trauma and everything that was in her backstory that was largely caused by her, and then trying to say that somehow she's made it to police detective and everything after all of this, despite being even tried for some of these crimes and whatnot. And I just don't see that happening. It doesn't work. And so I'm not really seeing the chemistry where a lot of people are like, within the film, characters are going, oh yeah, Whoopi Goldberg is just so attractive and everything. And sure, she was in the prime of everything at this point, but objectively within the industry at this point, even with other comparisons like Tina Turner, for goodness sake, I don't see it. I just don't see it at all. So how Sam Elliott's character just metaphorically rolls over for her, I just don't see it. Critics were really harsh on it at the time. There's a lot of good stuff here that with some script tweaking, maybe a different main actor could have really worked and could have been really good stuff. There's some really cool stories throughout how at one point with a scene they were filming, supposedly some Secret Service agents near there thought it was a real robbery, and they called up the LAPD and they actually stormed the set and everything, and they got involved in everything. And so some really neat stuff behind it. Like I said, the action is really good with this. It's just everything else that's kind of really lacking. I was able to catch the movie over on Tubi, so of course it did not cost me anything. By the time I finally dropped this review, I can't promise you it's still there. It's worth a check. Tubi is just awesome to troll through and find all this stuff like this, as well as a lot of big hits, as well as TV shows from all time periods that you've just kind of forgotten about, and some really good ones worth revisiting. So I do recommend that. If you're looking for, is this an essential action movie? No, not really. if you've watched a lot of the big stuff, you want an 80s one with some really good stuff, and it still has great action sequences despite stuff being around it a little weak. Oh yeah, totally. Check this one out. I mean, I'd probably give it like a 5 or 6 out of 10. So not quite. I think I gave it a 6, not slightly above what audiences ended up agreeing on. I agree with some of the points the critics of the time, like Leonard Maltin, brought up. Personally, I enjoyed the violence. I thought that was a really good part of it. But issues with the script that I didn't like, and the main character just did not have the charisma to really pull this off. So if you go in looking for a Sam Elliott movie, you're going to be a little disappointed, especially in the finale. If you go in just looking for some good action sequences, there's some really good hidden stuff in here. If you're a Whoopi Goldberg fan, I have no clue. I have no clue how fans of Whoopi Goldberg think.
I swear, I have absolutely no idea what women are thinking. I don't get it, okay? I admit, I'm not getting the signals. I am not getting it.
So anyway, this one was a little bit more off the cuff. Gonna see if I can get this into production and onto the channel a little bit faster. But Fatal Beauty from 1987, a pretty good B-grade action movie with some issues that, with a little bit of tweaking, maybe a cast change, could have been greatness. This has been Stormdog, and until next time.